Hey guys, it's Chris from Highline Guitars and you're watching another episode of From the Luthier's Workbench. First thing I want to talk about in this week's episode is I wanted to address some comments that were posted on my most recent quick tips video where I talk about why you shouldn't have to worry about selecting the angle for your headstock when you're designing and building a guitar. And unfortunately in that video I don't think I really conveyed my opinion about this in a clear and concise manner. And a lot of people came away thinking that my opinion is that the difference between a 10 degree and like a 17 degree headstock is that there is no difference. And that's not quite true. And if you listen to the video carefully, at one point I do say almost. But I didn't really stress that, and for that I apologize. But I didn't really want to get into the math behind it in that video because it's a quick tips video. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to give you the results that I came up with using the mathematical formula to determine that downward force. And I think you'll understand why it doesn't make that much difference. If you look at a guitar that has an angled headstock of 10 degrees, you do the math on that, the amount of downward force at the nut as measured in pounds is 3.38 pounds. On a guitar with a 17 degree angled headstock, if you do the math, the amount of downward force at the nut is 5.7 pounds. So the difference between a 17 and a 10 degree is only 2.32 pounds. I don't think that's enough for most people to be able to detect when they play the guitar. And what makes matters even more convincing of this argument is that if you look at if you consider the 10 degree headstock versus a 12 degree, you're talking ounces. It's just not enough to really worry about. Yet I see people frothing at the mouth on guitar forums arguing this point. And it's silly. There's just no reason to. Now I know there are going to be some of you out there who will say, you know, I can tell the difference between a 14 degree and a 16 degree headstock. And to that I say bull. And the reason is I think I could probably sit you down, blindfold you, hand you a guitar with a 10 degree headstock and have you play it. And then I can hand you a guitar with a 17 degree headstock, and I seriously doubt you're going to be able to tell the difference. And I don't think many of you would take me up on that because you know I'm right. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say on the subject. And now I want to talk about what I'm currently working on right now, which I think is even more interesting. But as you can see, I've started assembly, and really what I'm doing here is I'm just doing kind of a mock-up in order to determine what size stepper motors I need to put on all the access. One of the things I have to do is I have to weigh the gantry and use that weight along with friction and that sort of thing and plug it into mathematical formulas in order to determine what size or how much torque the stepper motors need to produce. So that's why I've assembled to this point. I also wanted to see how it was going to look, and I'm pretty happy with how it's turning out. I think it looks kind of cool. But also, there were a couple of comments about the concerns that I might have about stability. Is it going to wobble? Is it going to bend or flex? And I can tell you right now, this thing is just, it does not move at all. There is no flex, no twisting. I'm really pleased with how sturdy and stable this assembly is. So I'm pretty confident that this machine is going to work really well. And like I said, what I did was, once I got this assembled, is I weighed the gantry. And I took that number and along with the friction of the Acme lead screws, and I plugged that into some formulas to calculate this torque requirements for the stepper motors. So I've got a pretty good idea what I'm going to do as far as steppers. And it's going to be, and I knew this from the very beginning, it's going to be a NEMA 23 stepper motor, and I think it's going to be putting out about 3 Newton meters of holding torque, which is, that's roughly equivalent to 425 ounce-inches of holding torque. Now, in truth, holding torque really isn't that important. What's important is how much torque the motor is generating as I move the machine at the feed rate that I want to move it at. And again, that took all kinds of mathematical formulas, but I was able to find motors that would do a great job of moving this gantry, moving the y-axis and z-axis and x-axis and everything. So what I ended up doing was I figured that the y-axis, which is the long axis here, that requires the biggest or the most torque to do that. And so what I decided was is the motor that I'm selecting for the y-axis I'll use for the same size on all the other axes. In truth, when you're designing a CNC machine, you could use different motors for each axis, but that can lead to some issues of complexity. Each motor, if it's a different size, it requires a different rating for the stepper driver, and then that can get into some issues with selecting a power supply. So what most folks do is they will use one size motor for each axis, and then that just simplifies the process. And that may mean that like the z-axis has a motor that's way more powerful than it needs to be, but that shouldn't be an issue. As far as the control that I'm thinking about, there's so many different ways that you can do this, and I've just come across a technology that will allow me to connect my 3-axis machine with 4 motors to my laptop using Arduino and Gerbil. And I used Arduino and Gerbil on my X car. And I was actually kind of looking to get away from that and go more with the, the Mach 3, Mach 4 type control software and that method of controlling the machine. And I was also thinking of using the UC 100 or maybe the UC 300 or 400 so that I could connect to my laptop using, either a regular USB cable or an Ethernet, and then that way I could use either UC CNC software or I could use Mach 3 or Mach 4. But when I found this card that will allow me to connect to the controller with USB, it kind of got me thinking. And there are a lot of cards out there that will let you do this, and a lot of them that are coming out of China that are frankly too complicated to actually function. But I found a card I really can't get into it too much in detail right now. It's too complicated. So I'll save that for a later date. But the cool thing about it is I can use, your regular stepper motors, high-powered stepper drivers, high-powered power supply, a breakout board, and then use this card to connect to it, and then just use free Gerbil software with Universal G-Code Center or any of the other free open source controller software out there. And it just would simplify the whole thing. If it doesn't work for some reason, I would be out about $25. So I figured I'll go that way to start with, and if it works, great. If not, then I can always just pull that card, throw it in the trash, and get a UC 100 and go from there, because that we know works, but it's a lot more expensive. So that's kind of where things stand right now at the moment. I'm hoping tomorrow to get all the extrusions that I ordered to build the table and the table support, and once that comes in, I'll be able to install the y-axis rails. I'll be able to put the gantry on and make sure that everything is lined up and working properly. And then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to disassemble everything, lay it all out, set up the camera, and shoot a time lapse of me assembling the entire machine. So, but that's down the road, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, so right now I've just got, like I said, the extensions for the table coming, and I've got a new one of these for my Z-axis, because if you'll remember, they sent one that was the wrong size. So they're sending me one that will hopefully be here pretty quick, and then I'll go from there. I've also got the the wire drag chains for the x-axis and the y-axis coming, and I've got motor mounts coming. And once I get all that, then I'll make the final decision on my controls and pull the trigger. So it's coming along pretty good. I'm having a lot of fun putting this thing together, and I hope you enjoy seeing this project come to fruition, and hopefully within the next couple of weeks I can start cutting some guitar bodies. So, but until then, have a great rest of your week, and we will see you in the next episode.